Hi, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the Porthole to Justice. This is Amelia Duran. It is July 5th, 2017, and I have a very special show planned. I have David Malkin back again. He is joining us for an episode titled Black Goo and You. And David, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you doing, Amelia?
I am good. I am really good. It's the sun is setting here, and it's really nice. So it's perfect. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm doing pretty well, actually.
That's
I
great.
just wish that the timing on certain other things I'm working on right now would move along. But no, other than that, I'm golden, and I hope everybody else is, genuinely.
Yeah.
So
We're blessed.
let me explain. Yeah, totally.
We're
totally.
blessed.
And definitely grateful for it. Definitely grateful. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I'm going to let you go ahead and premise the show, because I think the title kind of says a lot. So I'm going to let you premise the show. Go ahead.
So the reality of the situation is that, there's when we're dealing with the issue of the black goo, is that it's not one thing. Like they're just saying, "Oh, this black goo." It's like we have to be really careful with it, because let me just say this: the people who are engineering a lot of, I don't like the term enslavement, but I think the proper way to put it is that are engineering our confusion. Because if we were truly enslaved, we wouldn't even be able to have this conversation. So there's some sort of, we've got a hand, we have a free hand, so to speak. We're not entirely tied up, if you will. But the people that are engineering our captivity and our confusion are literally, I wouldn't say they're smart enough. I would say they are intelligent enough to be aware of the fact that we have a certain amount of, constructs laid upon the edifice of who we are as humans from the moment we're born. Average person has 60. I dare somebody ask me to name them. But these constructs are designed specifically to support untrue organized religious institutions, untrue socio-political structures, i.e. politics, and aspects of banking and commerce. Now, these layers have been laid upon us so that way we feel that these dynamics are important. But in relation to the black goo, try to imagine if you're going to war and you're a king, or you're a queen, or you're some form of power, right, or magistrate. Mm-hmm. And you have to have an army. Eventually your army will hit a stalemate. Once your army hits that stalemate, you have to engineer a kind of, You have to engineer a kind of proxy army to do aspects of war for you. So when they're referring to the black goo, what we're talking about is a type of proxy. Our enemy, without me bothering to really give the description, is that we have, humans as the prize, but the battlefield, as well as, biologically speaking, we have the proxy as different viruses or specific types of life forms, right? Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about the black goo, they're talking about certain types of biological life forms. And I still have to do more research.
I want to emphasize is it's programmable.
Yeah, it's programmable. And this is the cruelty of it. I have to be honest. This is the really cruel part about it, is that when you look at the Native American color wheel, that's actually another type of alchemic symbol, and it's not just an alchemic symbol. It's relating to different types of pigment. Like, it's literally relating to different types of pigment. But one of the components is that those four types of pigment That's who we are. And technically, in reality, I think there's really only three. And some people say, "Oh, what do you mean you're going to cut out the white pigment?" It's like, no, it's an alchemic process. Anyway. So that's humanity right there in a nutshell. That's white, that's black, that's red, or orange, and yellow. That's who we are. However, this other thing, the black goo, is not in the family, and the reason why it's not in the family is because of the fact that all these human constructs that come out, that were raised, to the upright and allowed to continue living as sentient life forms, humanoid or hominid, if you will, the Homo sapien, Homo erectus, way beyond Cro-Mag and so on and so forth, sapien, or whatever. We were gifted this form and this place to inhabit and this world to be in, but this stuff is not a part of that, because everything else in the natural environment, to some degree, has to adhere to natural law. This stuff does not. It just doesn't. Even bacteria has the ability to manufacture itself. And then we get into this weird space where we say, well, what is the black goo and how is it programmable? One of the components of our reality, there was a time when from what I'm understanding, if you wanted to program this stuff to do certain things in its host, right? Because it's a proxy fighting a war on behalf of some enemy, right? Mm-hmm. This stuff, in order to program it, they would have to make sacrificial offerings to change a kind of resonance, or almost like a fleeting ululation, if you will, in the environment, to get this stuff to behave a certain way, energetically speaking. So it's like, okay, here's a fish, I'll cut its head off, fillet its guts, put it this particular way at this time of day, in this location, and say some words to, energetically put intent into it. And then it becomes a situation where, for whatever electromagnetic reason, this stuff activates. But now we have to understand that when they were originally doing it, a lot of their timetables back in the day to manage this stuff, I don't think, here's what's funny, is I am not sure yet if they were made aware of its functionality through being infected with it, or whether they were directly whether someone was told this is how it functions, you can use it, or whether they were told in such a way they had no idea what they were doing. Mm-hmm. You understand? Mm-hmm. So it's like, hey, do this thing and you can get this. You know what I mean? And they weren't aware of that. Like, they weren't aware of the...
For lack of, a better word, I'm just going to use demonic. Would you say that it's darker in nature?
I would have to say it is. I would have to say it totally is. I would have to say it is so dark. If you snap your finger tomorrow, you're gonna have a bunch of weird things happening tomorrow. If you snap your finger, and when I say weird things, you're just gonna have everything become ultra positive. But you're gonna have people that are so, like, if you could snap your fingers and rid our world of whatever this is, mm-hmm. it would create an instant situation where you would have people who are already so cognitively putrescent, so rancid cognitively, that they'd be killing overall, like, in a week. Because once people can't mentally function that way, those types of people become uncomfortable being around it, because they're kind of naked. Because if they say something that they would normally say, or they, people would be like, wait.
So let's say, like, for instance, somebody is...
All the worst parts of the Bible and whatever other religious book you want to pull out and crack open, basically, I can safely say, let's attribute to this.
So if somebody is polluted or infected with the black goo, they're naturally gonna resonate from a negative frequency or a lower frequency.
Not at first. I mean, you have people who I mean, like, some of your sexually transmitted diseases are a variant of this stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, hence the terminology, like a Jezebel. Like, I mean, you have some sexually transmitted diseases that actually increase a person's libido.
Oh,
you know?
by the way, I was listening to a video, a gentleman today, he was talking about how it's in all of the tattoo ink and all of the tattoo parlors. And it actually binds with the nerve endings, and it can be activated remotely.
See, and that's the crazy part about it. Like when I look at people, like I have no tattoos. I have zero. I'm almost, I'm almost eligible, for ARP magazine.
I don't have any either. And
I have none, and I have zero.
I was raised that it was like marking cattle.
I fully understand that. People marking their temples, and I know there's some people that have religious tattoos, and I totally get it. You're marking it. I respect that. But just for me, I've never found a tattoo I've never found a tattoo I believed in enough to make it permanent on my body. Say, well, you're not willing to die for it. It's like, not at all.
But the problem is this. Okay, this stuff, it's in the tattoo ink and all of it's been replaced in all of the tattoo parlors. I'm sure unless you go to like an organic tattoo parlor or you get one like a Samoan tattoo or something with the bamboo. The thing is what happens is apparently it fuses with the nerve endings.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and it can be activated and programmed, and apparently it like makes people be very negative, sarcasm. They think that it has like in the program, apparently it makes you think that you're like better than other people. It also it denotes more sexual, cheating, not desiring your spouse, maybe cheating, or even pedophiling. I've heard like that's the influence that this stuff has.
See, and that's something I want to definitely make a distinction about, because of the simple fact that, like, you'll have people say, oh, well, we've always known group X, 400 or 500 years ago to do this, and they tattooed all of their bodies. It's like, let's not confuse the Maori or, Pacific Islanders or, even some groups, in a place like Japan, or even pirates for that matter, with whatever these people are about and the nature of tattooing. Because they were using, as I understand, they were using octopus ink and a few other things. I could be wrong. Mm-hmm. But there's other chemicals that they, there was a thing among pirates about learning how to tattoo from a different Pacific Island indigenous group. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, when we were talking, you were explaining that there was several different programs. There was like 6 to 18 programs.
Yeah.
There is an active effort to dismantle and destroy the family. Okay. Yeah.
Well, let me say this. We have a real problem here. We have to understand something very simple. If you got a couple problems, we have to understand that the best thing that could happen. Okay, so women have a certain attitude about, and I don't want to make. Well, let me say this. The male versus female thing is a contrived construct at all times. Because remember, if you can keep the two of these, it starts there. It starts there with, if you can make her think that this is who she really is, then she's always going to only care about aesthetic or physical items. When another component to this is that they have a psychology. The individuals responsible, or whatever's responsible, the group responsible for our situation, purposely, continuously engineer a situation so that women will never naturally get to their right mind. Like, and people say, well, what do you mean by that? It's like creating situations where women put chemicals near their vajayjay, right? Or ingest certain chemicals, contaminate their gut flora, which make up a large percentage of the cognitive hormonal balance that's, the body instructs, the endocrine system and the endocannabinoid system to, pump through the brain to be able to function properly. But in terms of the situation we have here, is that we naturally have, I'll say, 8 different types of synergistically harmonious organisms living in us. Technically, there's 16, but there's really kind of only 8 living in our body. These organisms basically function as a way of harmonizing us with the natural programming of the environment at a quantum physical level, like between the sun, the planet, the terra firma, you name it, the air, birds, all other biology. It's designed to keep us in a state of harmony. However, we have a situation where everything has been designed, these 16 programs, right, have been designed in tandem to match that. They've been designed to match it in such a way where it's like our normal process, without being hindered or unadulterated, is we're either mating, eating, sleeping, or defending. These are our normal cognitive functions that we have hardwired in us to do to keep our biological material moving forward. But what they have figured out as society and the human family evolved and became more complex in a much more rich and dynamic social environment, where we were going from having to only recognize, 50 or 20 to, 160 faces, to now having to recognize, a multiplicity of like 2,000 faces. Can you remember 2,000 faces and 2,000 names? Can you do that? You know what I mean? Like that kind of situation where you may not remember the name, but you'll remember the face. But the cognitive function of what that's forced us to do over this time has created some very peculiar new developments in our brain. And what they're doing right now is they're trying to keep us confused while simultaneously trying to biologically use what could be called the black goo to basically try to move us into this new functioning system that they're trying to create for us, while simultaneously trying to grapple with all these new developments in our cognitive abilities. So their biggest issue is it's not that we've moved far beyond mating, eating, sleeping, and defending, or patronizing or interfacing with their religious systems, their banking institutions, or even their political systems, which are all things that do not grow out of the ground. And basically, we're at a point now where their biggest fear is that we're going to say, wait a minute, I actually understand what the Bible's saying to me, and it's not a literal thing anymore. Or even worse, never mind that it's not a literal thing. If you want to argue that, we're moving into a phase where we're comprehending it in an eisegesis manner instead of eisegesis manner instead of an exegesis manner. Or the eisegesis? Yeah. Where I may have those two words incorrectly stated, but we're moving to a state where we're reading this material now, and we're interpreting it with a deeper spiritual and cognitive function to our being, that's allowing us to understand a deeper, richer, cosmic, higher meaning that like kind of creates a situation where it's like, well, why would I go to church or go to vote or patronize a bank if I'm understanding this is my new relationship with my higher power, and I have to go out and heal all the old wounds with the other humans living on the planet with me. Mm-hmm. And not only do I have to heal all the other old wounds, I also have to go back and I have to correct my relationship with the opposite sex, and I have to make sure that she never, ever, ever, ever thinks that any of the beauty standards that have been constructed, have anything to do with her ever again. That's not to say, oh no, women are all going to, put on 20 pounds now and let the hair on their bodies grow and their legs, and no, that's not what that's about. That's about the fact that we have to understand that what this group of individuals have been doing to us all this time is systemically for a while, it was a very slow process with how they were infecting us with this stuff. Very slow process. But now they've gotten high tech where they're like, okay, we want this demographic to erode this component of society. So now let's put this in their food.
So
let's put this in this product.
Because, and I need to enter. I'm sorry. Think
about it. Potassium sorbate. Remember now, potassium sorbate is the semen of an animal, but it's a food additive.
Ew. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, you see what I'm saying? It's a semen of essentially. What I'm guessing is it's hooven animals and non-hooven animals. Like it matters, but I mean it's also in Red Bull.
It says in the Bible, don't eat hooven animals.
Yeah.
And only fish with scales.
I'm sorry, split-hooved animals.
Split-hooved animals. But what I want to say is, when you say infecting, what are the different ways that we're being subjected to this? And is the black goo? Is it a virus? Is it bacterial? Is it if it's fusing with the nerve endings, what does that mean? And how many different ways are we being exposed?
Okay, so we keep. Let me put it to you this way. Let me give you an example of one of these things. What one of these things is? One of these things is herpes. Simplex 1, 2. I mean, there's over 38 simplexes. I think 36 or 32, 38. I got to look it up. They keep playing with the number, or maybe I'm not remembering properly, and the they I'm referring to about that is not true. But I do know for a fact there's over 30 herpes simplexes, right? Mm-hmm. Now, what you have to understand about this is that, as I understand it, from what my research is showing me and what everyone else is saying now, is that, that stuff's been curable for a long time. And if you notice, even if Valtrex did something other than mask the outbreak, there's no reason they would entertain curing it, because the HSV is another version of it. And it's not only that the HSV is one, it's one of the versions of it. All those other, they're going to tell you something silly like, oh, well, it's naturally occurring in this particular way, right? They'll tell you that. But what they're not going to tell you is that, we're in a situation where basically what's going on is they, doctored some of the mutations that stuff is. Like, they're not going to tell you that, psoriasis is another form of it. They're not going to tell you that the minute you stop eating sugar and yeast for like 2 to 6 months, along with drinking alcohol and, what's the other word? Or any type of sweetener, along with like cutting out like certain types of, like heavy intake of red meat or birds, to the point where you're eating like, a little bit of red meat once a week. And then like, if you have to have meat, and if you're eating, certain types of, nuts, not all nuts, but just certain types of nuts. I mean, they're not going to tell you that that's going to help you clean your body out. If you're taking argan oil, if you're taking 1 drop a day in 22 ounces of water of 35% food grade hydrogen peroxide, or you're taking, at least 2, you're ingesting at least, like 2 soup spoons of black seed oil a day for that same amount of time, or you're doing actual cold pressed Greek oil of oregano, or you're drinking Simpson's oil, and you're like really like working at, and you're juicing and you're really working at keeping yourself, calm. Mm-hmm. That really you can purge it out of your body. They're also not going to tell you that you're going to test positive for it, even if you've never really been ever exposed to it. Even if you get the fever blisters, they're not going to tell you, well, that's also a byproduct of getting chicken pox, which is also a variant of it, and so is, psoriasis and all these other things. And if they are allowed to play with certain frequencies, they can, and they get you to eat certain foods, they can also force not necessarily a spontaneous mutation, but an inadvertent I'm using the word inadvertent incorrectly. They can force a mutation inside the host. You know what I mean? So
when you say host,
the human body,
mm-hmm.
they can force a mutation. People say that's scientifically impossible. It's like, do not make me go get it. Don't make me go get the documentation. You got to remember, when someone writes a paper in a scientific journal and it passes peer review, before it passes peer review, there are people looking over that going, how can we implement this for more control? And people say, oh, that sounds crazy. That sounds really, okay. We don't have to agree. Just call me crazy and keep walking down the street. Thank you. So we have a situation where they're literally hiding the fact that, like, dementia and Alzheimer's are related to, herpes not being treated, but also telling people at the same time, we can't treat you for this. You're stuck for life. Uh-huh. When in reality, you could have passed it. Like, you could have passed it out of your body. They're not going to tell you that osteoporosis and rheumatoid arthritis and certain types of it are funguses that are caused, to spiral out because we have these, we or people in general have this stuff in them. They're not going to tell you Valtrex does nothing but just hides it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be having Jillian Maitai on the show. She's going to talk about the detox because what I want to talk about is the black goo and the nature of what it means when it's in your body. It actually breeds these programmable bacteria and parasites, right?
So now we're getting back into our old friend spirit cooking. Remember?
Yeah.
Remember our old spirit cooking?
Yeah.
When we were talking about spirit cooking, one of the things that kind of come into play about that is the fact that, like, what people. I'm sorry. Can you folks hear me? Hello.
We can hear you, David.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, so one of the things that, we're not discussing is that's the other component of spirit cooking. Here, let me switch my sound out. One moment.
Well, yeah, and what are the ways that we are infected? Now, I know we
sorry, can you guys hear me?
We
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
The vaccines.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. What are the ways that we are exposed to this?
I'm sorry, I just got to situate my sound.
Oh, okay, you can't hear me. Testing. 1, 2. Testing.
Now? Don't worry, it wasn't Illuminati or something. I was bumming my sound from like 7 other doors. So yeah, I mean, basically,
we're not that exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, sure, whatever. So
what are the ways? What are the ways that we're exposed? Because I know we mentioned and we touched on the vaccines. As being a possible
whatever vector. Let me put it this way: kosher food. I don't even know. I don't even know if people are going to be able to mess around with that stuff anymore. People say, "Well, it's holy, it's pure." It's like, do some research on what the word kosher means, what the laws are surrounding what's kosher, and also what differentiates kosher food. Like, in order for something to be kosher, it means that the head rabbi had to spit in it. Hold on one second. Hello? Yeah, it means the head rabbi.
That was a joke.
No, it's not.
Oh my God.
And if I'm wrong, which I highly doubt.
Oh my gosh! And I totally said that as a joke at Passover one year. And now I know why nobody laughed at it. I know why nobody laughed at my joke. Oh my God. I'm sorry. Okay. Proceed. Are you there? Did I lose you? David? Hello? Oh, no.
Sorry about that. Apparently, computer. So, yeah, I mean, if I'm wrong, please correct me. But I guarantee if you grab your phone right now, look at the little Google icon, and hit it, and either type in, does the rabbi spit in the food? Does the rabbi spit in the food? Okay.
if I'm wrong, I will go and look to see where I saw that little write-up about it. But I can tell you this right now. If you look it up and actually give it a good read, you'll see, okay, wait a minute, like what makes Manischewitz wine kosher? You know? Like, just start giving it a look. Just start giving it a read.
Okay, I'm going to have to look that up because...
in fact, here, let me do it right now. Hold on 1 second. Just give me a second, everybody.
Okay, I'm looking at this.
Okay,
I don't know. I'm not pulling up.
I'm looking at the articles and like all of these hedge articles pop up.
Yeah.
We're like, no. It's a misconception. It's a misconception. Really? You know what else is a misconception? Moyles giving oral circumcisions. And how it's tradition.
Uh-huh.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, they're going to feel like they're being attacked. And I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't know. Like, if you can't.
Well, okay, so now that we know that they've engineered this black goo and that it's programmable, and there's about 8 programs, and that all of them are negative, and it makes you vibrate at a lower frequency.
Well, I wouldn't so much say a lower frequency. I would have to say.
Well, you can be activated. So, like, okay, they no longer have to have sleeper cells, so to speak.
Well, see, here's the crazy part. Is that one of the underlying components that I think that gets missed is that when you look at all of the most recent shooters, mass shooters, what do they all have in common? They all are either part of some sort of psychological educational study, meaning that they are participating in it, or they did participate in one. It's funded through the through the federal government during the Bush regime in particular. And then you have another component where, hold on 1 second.
I mean, the black goo, with the black goo and its applications, you wouldn't necessarily need programs like MK Ultra anymore, or.
So let me put some perspective for you. Here's the deal. We're dealing with a reality where they all were part of those programs. They all had some form of third to fourth generation entertainment system, i.e. video games, and they all played the same specific type of games, in conjunction with the fact that they all were, to a degree, on some form of psychotropic medication. And, what we don't realize is that there's a term called a nevish. Hold on 1 second.
Well, okay, what I want to talk about is how people are infected and how it's activated. Like, how are they exposed? What are the many different ways that people can be exposed to this besides getting a tattoo?
Okay, so now, so you got video games, and people are like, what do you mean? Okay, this is something really disturbing and bizarre I'm about to explain to you. The exposure isn't the issue. The issue is activation, right? Mm-hmm. Activation can be certain iconography in video, and it's not just the iconography. It's like, let me put it to you this way. Go look at every number one single in America for the last, I'd say 17 years. Like if you can find a video for the video on YouTube, just go look at that video. So let's say the last 12 years. That'll push us back to about 2017 or 2005, right? Just as the beginning of the financial crisis started, right? Mm-hmm. So if you live in my system and I mess with your money, and this is the cruelty about how women have been activated to a degree, where they figured out that if you're a man and you've been intimate with a woman, her genetic material and her gut flora, keeps itself active inside of the male. Depending on their interconnectivity or the amount of, emoted and ovulated, hormones in his body, they're going to bind to those. And literally what you have, I'm not entirely describing it correctly, but basically what's happening is that they're aware that the vaginal flora from her body gets stuck in his body, right? Mm-hmm. And her mood swings are a dynamic of him basically being put in a situation where even though he's nowhere near her, his urges are directly linked to hers. So if you're going around and having multiple partners, what they're realizing is the amount of interconnectivity biologically. So they manage that through putting certain chemicals in your food so that way you can be homogenized or normalized to a point where what they're realizing is that there's all these new variants of social behavior that they have to regulate without telling you they're regulating it. So they create all these different shows that are taking advantage of the different neurochemical states of excitation that they're inducing in the females while simultaneously creating this sort of component drone that behaves a particular type of way in response to validate that, which is not unnatural. What's unnatural is the methodology. What's unnatural is the timing. What's unnatural is the premise, the reasons, and the means. So what I'm saying is they have iconographically found a way to biomolecularly signal you through you and auditorially signal you through your television, your media, and your radio and whatnot, to a degree where you will get things drilled in your head visually and auditorily, so that way, when they are ready to trigger you, you've already like neurochemically set up the pathways for something that doesn't exist, to the point where people will literally feel twitchy about something, as if like, you ever seen a guy punch at the air or a woman like just flail her hands? You're like, who's she fighting? Who's he fighting? So that's a demonstration of what that looks like, but except this time they found a way to shut off that physiological response in a functioning cognitive mind and neurochemically switch it over to just, being shut off. It's almost as if the person's going to like sort of, wave their fist in the air, except you shut off their cognitive brain and you take it over and you allow that nervous energy to go fill a particular task, like a mass shooter. So they're charging you up, and just as you get ready to hop in the car and drive it, they shut you off and take over the car. But this is pretty much where we're at now. But now it's gotten so advanced in relation to it being programmable that the component of it being programmable comes in when you have to deal with the reality that it's the hormones that you're being induced to have in these irregular, contrived experiences. Like, did it not feel like when, Trump got elected, that people's response was almost as if we had stabbed, burned, or electrified a hive-minded organism, and it reeled back simultaneously, like, it was like, what is it? I swear to God, it was like we electrocuted it, stabbed its mother brain, and the drones were like,
we poured salt on the snail.
Pretty much, man. And people will be like, how could you say that about Hillary, a Bernie supporter? It's like, you got to understand, This place is a fucking ant farm. Excuse my French. This place is an ant farm. All the stuff you see on top, that's not the control. That's not the control. That activity, that moving around, that emotive affectation of care or civilization, that's fake. That is so fake. It's not even fake. It's a protracted theatrical play.
Yeah.
It's a protracted theatrical play. And here's the crazy part.
It's like when you go to court.
It's like when you go to court.
And you know they've already got the decision made.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there.
Unless you're going to put more currency or more energy into it, meaning you're going to throw more billion. You know what I mean? It's like unless you got like a billion lawyers. You know what I mean? Like here's one of the components of law that no one talks about. Speaking of another fiction in the system that it uses to prevent us from catching it, because it's an it, everybody. It's an it. But we're in a situation where here's this thing, right? Knowing what the outcome, here's this thing, engineering the outcome, and I say engineering the outcome meaning that people don't know. There's just kind of a track path, right? So it's like two people come in court, you kind of already know the outcome based on their CAPA accounts, who pays more taxes and didn't do something that the public won't stand for, right? A millionaire kills his wife. He's going to jail. He might even get to cheer. Billionaire kills his wife. He gets 2 years and 2 years. What is it? 2 years at a luxury resort, not a prison, a luxury resort, and conjugal visits, and 5 years probation, and his or her company back when they're done. His or her company back when they're done. But we're dealing with a scenario where basically, if you go into court and you hold on. Sorry about that. You're in a situation where you're basically, how can I put this? I'm sorry, everybody. I'm on the move right now to the grocery store. I have to take care of something, so you're traveling with me. Okay. So that's a little bit of the sound.
Go soon.
Okay, so just a long story short, basically it's a scenario where what you're observing is the fact that they already know the outcome based on your CAPA account. But if one of the parties spends more money, you can create a legal barrier for them to proceeding further with their case. And that's the only, and then at that point it's still a matter of, do you want to overturn it? But I digress. My point is, they've been using, the technology. They're Bluetoothing everything. They're getting data.
Not only that, but once you're infected with the goo, it interfaces. It's intelligent and it's synthetically telepathic. Everyone, so you're interfacing with technology and the black goo, right?
Okay, so that's the thing that we have to also clarify, is that they're also hedging their bets on us, kind of being aware of it, but interpreting it from a particular perspective of it's something that's innate within us. So they're hedging their bets on being like, oh, it's innate within the human construct, so it's okay. And then as that falls apart, because they're gonna start sending their little drones out to talk about it and parrot about it, and then they're gonna end up in a situation where they have to acknowledge that, hey, that's it's not just innate within humans. Oh, I'm sorry, it's only innate within a certain ethnic groups, or and they're gonna pull that one. But unfortunately, to a degree, some of that will be true and some of that will be false. And it's almost like they didn't know they were drinking dirty water kind of situation. So infection, this is why you have so many people purporting the psychology of trying to convince you that all the old ancient monolithic civilizations, participated in like pederasty and pedophilia.
Well, no, and I understand from what I gather in my research, I understand that it has these tendencies, it has this influence to get people to cheat on their spouse or to get them to pedophile their children. Those types of things. It has that inclination in its makeup.
Oh, totally. Totally. I mean, there's
stronger when you get the tattoo, because the tattoo, it gets to fuse with your nerve endings, so you're going to be hypersensitive. Well,
see, here's another component to that. There's a study that just recently came out from like the university, and it's a university in California that's doing research on new forms of sunscreen, because anything higher will be poisonous and cause cancer. So it was like, if you're not using sunscreen, you can get a sunburn, and because of certain, chemicals that or certain substances that they were putting in the vaccines at one point, you can get melanoma and other types of, photoreactive cancers. Now, it's like, but if you use sunscreen, you're going to get cancer because of the toxicity of certain chemicals in it. Then to take this to the next level, so they're like, okay, we can't make this any stronger without poisoning you to death overtly. So they're developing this synthetic form of melanin. And I'm just like, Now, most people, let's say you're a black nationalist, you're going to kind of get a little weird, like, oh, white people. And I'm like, okay, cool, go for it. That's a legitimate concern. However, an even creepier concern is they wouldn't even show anybody what the molecular configuration was. And then they said polymers. I was like, what? Polymers? I've never known anybody to put a polymer in a human body and everybody get a happy ending. Never one time. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I'm sure there's some argumentative cases where people can show me, but I'm like, it's not. I'm like, and then that bonds to your nerve endings.
Mm-hmm.
That bonds to your melanocytes in your body. And I'm just like, no, so there's this weird thing going on where they're trying to, and then there's also that underlining component where they're like, well, white civilization is already dying anyway. You might as well just kind of get a nice little tan and blend in for a little bit, Like, huh? What are you saying?
What
are you saying? I mean, I'm sorry. I am a person of African heritage, and I do not want to get lighter. But if I was a person of European heritage and I like my light, my white, fair, aquiline skin and features, I wouldn't want to change it. But I also recognize the fact that, like, okay, what are we doing here for adaptations? But I know this much. You have people who have been infected, and they're promoting a certain psychology that's actually, if you take a clear cognitive critical look, you suddenly realize, this person isn't subtly promoting white genocide and just so happens to be white. This person is promoting human genocide and just so happens to be white. You know what I mean? It becomes this weird situation where you suddenly realize, like, we're dealing with some really disturbed proxies. Like, that's what you have to understand, is that when these people start promoting this stuff, mm-hmm. that's a proxy. That's whoever's at war with us. That's their proxy right there. Mm-hmm. That's their proxy, trying to get us to, win our own Darwin Awards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, seriously.
No, I really see that. I really see people making really poor choices. They're negatively motivated. They have like a sarcasm, and they look down on other people. I see it, and it's kind of like, I mean, I hate to say it, but
aroused. These people are like, there are scientific studies that tell you how these people are aroused when they find out we fall for their mess. And the more of us do it, the even better. Like, I'm telling you, the next time they start asking for money for a disease, mm-hmm. just be like, I don't care. It's like you finally found a way to make money on a disease you created, and you're going to confuse us about how you created it and where it came from. And then you're going to use women and children, or this poor athlete cut down in his prime, as some sort of psychological mommy response to get women to feel a certain way about it, to make men feel like they're not men if they don't feel and behave a certain way about it, and give you money. Mm-hmm. And drop it into a black hole so you can make new programs to accelerate the process. For real?
Mm-hmm.
These people are sick.
Yeah.
But that's what we're dealing with here is you have to understand that the limitations of human intellect in terms of minutia, detailed oriented, like extended macro to micro fractal observations of patterns in nature, where we're just limited. We got to accept that. It's okay. We can figure out some pretty awesome stuff, but we're going to hit some walls. We're going to hit some walls. And when we hit those walls, we're okay. But let me be clear about this. We're dealing with something that sees larger patterns that we couldn't even comprehend existed, to the point where we're dealing with a situation where this thing knows we're going to respond. It's telling its proxies how to move into that space, and to a degree, there's moments where they don't comprehend, so they have to reverse engineer some of the outcome, or they have to reverse engineer the procedure from the outcome and work their way back, and then start developing their programs. But now they've gotten to a point where there's a bit of contamination from their contamination, where they're like, well, we don't need to hide the fact that we want to cannibalize and have sex with your kids, or poison you, or turn you all into slaves. I mean, just kind of delicious baby back rig makers, if you really want to look at it. Heavy lifters, I mean, we could practically feed you poop and you still do what we wanted. Like, this is the kind of psychology of the frail, diseased creatures we're dealing with. These are its proxies. Why would you want someone that even vaguely hints at that kind of stuff? I mean, these people are sitting in a room every time they come up with a new idea that we fall for, laughing. Like, these people's bowels are relieving themselves while they laugh at us. That's how hard they're laughing. But in terms of activation, it's it's literally you gotta disengage the fantasy of certain TV shows and certain mediums. It's like the radio. I mean, like they've weaponized entertainment. So even your leisure, you spend so much. You Google how much time the average human spends in front of a television. Google it and watch what happens. Watch what happens. Just mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. If you think how new generations, since the flat TV came along in 2008, that are being exposed to these new high-rate, frequency waves and interlaced.
Pretty turned off in general by Hollywood at this point. And
they're getting there, but Hollywood's running to television.
I mean,
you see what I mean?
They're even starting to support, alternative platforms. They're putting their money where their attention is being focused, and it's not so much on mainstream media anymore. For me,
but that's only because they've been caught. It's like Time. New York Times had to retract the story that they put out saying 17 different intelligence agencies supported the Russia hacking narrative, and my whole time I was like, well, who's your point of contact to each of those agencies? And they could only name a few. They didn't even give you the other 17. And I was like, first of all, what liaison do you have that high up in government that's going to even spit in your general direction? That's going to even spit in your general direction. Nada. And, it got so bad they showed us footage of a video game. But again, it's not so much what they're showing us. It's the neurological, physiological, chemical response they want. Because once those hormones get going, that's when the waveforms in the brain change. That's when the waveforms in there's two types. There's a couple of setups in your nervous system, but that's what they care about, is changing that electromagnetic pattern. As it interfaces with the brain and the fabric of reality. That's what they care about. I mean, you've got people coming out saying, the archons changed the timeline. And I'm thinking to myself, yes and no. Can I see your data? I won't say this person in the truther community's name, but it's just are you serious? So there's a component of all that where you just kind of have to stop and go, what we're dealing with right now, more than anything, more than whatever these people are trying to do, is we have to acknowledge how much personal responsibility we have to take with our next breath. And that's too much for people. That's too much to actually come off of autopilot. That's too much to say, I'm going to turn off the TV because I know that that's a vector till I can get my body clean. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm going to stop listening to radio and supporting musical artists that, you know, are doing things that if I had a kid, I wouldn't want them involved with whatsoever. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't want those people, you know, I wouldn't want those people 10 solar systems anywhere near my kid. You know, like let's stop eating food that, you know, food flavored chemicals. You know?
Yeah, so it's not even food anymore.
No, it's not even food anymore. So we're at this weird place right now where, you know, the amount of responsibility we have to inject into our daily lives are ridiculous. And a lot of people just they would rather lie down beside, you know, someone who says, you don't have to be better than I told you you were. As screwy as you are, you're perfect. Even though I'm part of the reason why you're deformed and wrecked like this, but I'm going to champion I'm going to champion the decimation I left you with as the new black. You know, it is not a cultural or a fashion statement to revel in your own self-destruction. Mm-hmm. It's just this. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what religion you believe in. It's not important. To the point where the uptick in brutality towards women, and excuse me, but the third world or underdeveloped nations or certain religious autocracies is a byproduct of the fact that women in certain places are starting to develop different types of chemistry en masse. And the behavior is a direct relation to them just kind of breaking out of it a little bit. And any sign of that is, you know, responded to with, okay, she's a whore, cut her head off. Oh, she was cheating. She's a witch. You know, so it's like Salem's Lot all over again. You know, you get to a new country, the biological vaginal floriculture start behaving differently because you're in a new radionic, you know, zone or pH zone. Your body's going to behave differently. It's going to adjust, re-optimize. But she's a witch. Now, were they doing strange things? Were they ingesting strange things? Oh, you betcha. But, you know. So, yeah, we just, you know, they don't have any more power than we keep giving them. And that's hard. That's really hard for some people. They can't even, no, they don't want, no, I want to, be the victim. Be the victim.
We've got to educate ourselves. We've got to look into this stuff and research it and take our power back.
And it's not like you got to save the world. You don't got to save the world. Just save the world that stares back at you every day in the mirror. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. No matter what they tell you on the news, you just kind of got to go, nah.
Yeah.
Part of what makes America or the rest of the world great is even poor people, which is pretty much all where we came from, found ourselves in a place where we were able to grow out of that. Only because of the fact that we were so poor that we had to innovate to continue making money, and it just so happened to transform into something the universe considered rewarding enough to bless us with wealth. And that's just the same thing for everyone else. It's like, stop thinking about, you know, the government's going to take it away. No, we don't have that kind of government anymore. We have fragments of that government, but the reality of the matter is that you can't be afraid to just keep trying. You can't. You absolutely cannot. I mean, that doesn't mean stand out there and be a nut job. But you know, the reality of the matter is that, like, yeah, we're totally under attack. I mean, they're coming, like, they're trying to get in every hole in your body.
Angles. And I wanted to get in a little bit more detail about the vaccines, but I know that you have to go.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know you have a dinner coming up. And I thank you so much for your time. We will resume, though. We will resume.
Yeah, we can definitely put a pin at whatever time mark this is and kind of keep going forward. I don't see why not.
Okay, cool. All right. That's awesome. Okay,
so we will.
You have a great evening, David.
You.
And thank you so very much.
You are more than welcome.
Yeah. Okay, so guys, that was another episode of Off the Cuff, Porthole to Justice, with myself, Amelia Duran, and David just left. And I just want to say thank you so much to everybody that's tuning in. I woke up this morning and I was really surprised about the ratings. It's like, whoa, what happened? So that was really nice. And so tune in, subscribe to the show. You can subscribe on Spreaker.com. It's really easy. And we're on Twitter, Instagram, and I interact a lot on Facebook. So I'm usually there responding to posts and things of that nature. So thanks again for tuning in. This has been another episode of Off the Cuff.